You're watching EVH and Gear TV, brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones. And official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it is the weekend. I hope everyone's doing well. I got thrown off the tracks a second ago because we had a major technical malfunction, and I don't know if it is YouTube's end or whatever. I had to reboot the computer here. But anyways, we're back with a familiar face that's been, I think, probably at least a year now. Steve Stevens, how are you, man?
I'm great. Good to see you. Good to be back.
It's very nice to have you back. It's been a while. I think it's been a year and a half at least, but it's, you know what? It's good to have you back, and lots of things have happened since then. So it gives us lots of things to catch up on. So it's very nice to have you back.
Great.
Yeah.
Is it cold up there right now?
Actually, no. It's actually, you know what it's like? The last time I went to NAMM, 2017, it was like the weather, it was cold for you guys down that way, but it's nicer than what we have now. Or nicer than what we normally have. But right now, it's about, I don't know, it's like, I don't do the metric system very well. It's 11 degrees or something like that. So probably in the 50s.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we have had snow already too. So it's coming, it comes and goes, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of us get sick up here too, because you go out in a t-shirt one day and then you have to put on a parka the next day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's kind of like that here as well. You'll get one day where it's, I mean, for us, if it's down in the, the 50s or the upper 40s, it's really cold. And we've had a couple of those. And then the next day it'll be, 78 degrees. So
that's nuts.
Yeah.
You got to have a good immune system to be able to flip-flop back and forth with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, anyways, we got lots to talk about tonight. As we get through the program a little bit later on, we'll talk about some of these new things that's happening. We'll have a look back at 2018. You guys can kind of reflect on that, but also want to extend a thank you to Josie too, your better half, for helping facilitate this and getting us all connected, and that kind of thing. So hats off to her too.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Man, she's a trooper, man. She does so much.
Oh yeah, I mean we're a team, and we're known as a team. We travel together, and she comes out and does all the meet and greets and wardrobe and whatever the job calls for on any given day with Billy Idol. But we wouldn't have it any other way. It's makes life on the road is, you're only playing for 2 hours or, with a sound check and meet and greet. It's all, 3 hours out of your day. And the rest of that day, if, it can get pretty monotonous, or, if you choose, just look at four walls in a hotel or something. And she's great because she'll arrange stuff for the band and dinners and, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go and stuff? So it's I actually get to see the world with her.
That's nice. That's what I was going to say, because I see a lot, you share a lot on social media, like the different sites you get to go see and things like that, because you have family there with you. That's awesome. Instead of having to make late night phone calls and all that kind of stuff, and can't wait to see you. She's there with you all the time.
Yeah, and I don't know. She never gets sick of watching the show. I'm like, I mean,
that's good.
We're playing the same set tonight, babe. All right, she still
never gets tired.
Digs watching us. So.
That's fantastic. I get the same thing here too. Working with family, it's nice. No one has your back better than family, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's take a look back over in a moment here. I'm going to try to get my chat open. I don't even have the chat open, and we are getting some reports that the buffering is bad. I do think it's on YouTube's end, so we're going to have to try and weather through that. But looking back at 2018, how's it been for you overall? We won't talk about the new announcements yet, but you've been busy with Billy, all kinds of stuff, guitars, going crazy with Nag's guitars and things like that. So how's it been overall looking back for you, do you think?
Yeah, a great mixture of, we had our Vegas residency happening. That was the third year that we had done it. But as well as that, we got to go to Europe. We toured Europe, did a bunch of festivals, and then we did an American tour, and then finished out our Vegas residency. Got to play the resurrected California Jam Festival here in California that Dave Grohl put together, and that was really great. He had rather than it just being another Foo Fighters mega show, he did some really cool things. Like he brought the, Chris from Nirvana up with him, as well as Joan Jett fronting it. So it was like great to actually be there. I mean, it's cool that we got to play and all, and we've done a lot of shows with Foo Fighters now. But it was a really great experience to kind of see these kind of lineups that were only there for that one day. And as a kid growing up and watching, Emerson, Lake and Palmer on California Jam, it was like such a great idea to bring that back, and great vibe. And, so that's kind of one of the things we finished out the year with. And obviously we introduced a new model guitar with Nags. So this is actually the third, I believe. We came out with the first Steve Stevens model, and then the Steve Stevens Classic, and then this, which is based on their Severn, which is kind of more a Strat scale.
I love that
guitar, but still a glue-on neck. So there's not a huge jump between, say a single cut player, having to adapt to a different scale, and then also different tonally. So it's kind of, it's like the kind of one instrument that I was in need of in my arsenal. Okay, if I, because you got to kind of, when you start traveling a lot and going over to Europe and stuff, these days you're very aware of weight of guitars, and if you can, get instruments and gear in the country that you're going to be, it saves you a lot in shipping and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just being selfish with the Nags, because I'm like just designing guitars that I need and making them available to me all around the world. And, but, I have, let's see, 40 years experience of playing guitar, playing different models and different, different brands, and, and I finally found a company that's really open to my suggestions, as well as they present stuff to me that I never would have thought of. And, there's a really good two-way communication between us.
Well, you and Peter go way back, don't you?
Well, Peter, was the first guy. I had a great experience with him. I was a Hamer endorser.
Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Probably most people know. And then in '84, I went to the Music Mesa in Frankfurt, and this is like the height of Rebel Yell, and I was kind of greeted as a traveling dignitary. But the Music Mesa that year was incredible experience. I got a call. Well, actually, Peter said when I arrived, he said, I'm Peter Wolf, and I'm your liaison here. He said, there's a jam happening. They would like you to come jam. And I was a little jet lagged. Oh, jam, I don't know. And he said, well, it's John Entwistle and and Zach Starkey, who was really a kid by then playing drums, Ringo's kid, who's now in The Who. So how are you going to turn that down?
Of course.
And I got to play, one of the songs we always did with Billy Idol was Shakin' All Over, which The Who, it's a Johnny Kidd and the Pirates classic, but The Who always did the penultimate version to me. And when I met Entwistle at Soundcheck, I said, I'd love to do, Shakin' All Over. So we did that night, and incredible experience. And then I got to meet the guys in Def Leppard and Rudolph Schenker, not Rudolph, Rudolph Schenker, and all these musicians that were just, it was really fun, because it's kind of like a NAMM show, but it's open to the public.
Right. So
the Phil and then Steve Clark was still alive. I'd hear them, a couple of booths over playing Rebel Yell. So I was like having to learn, some of the. I would go over, okay, show me a riff from one of the Def Leppard songs. It's really confused the hell out of people.
That's crazy.
But it was a great experience, and that was the first time I met Peter. So, he was always really cool and really honest with me, and we kind of always stayed in touch. And then he approached me about Nags. I had only seen a photograph of a Nags guitar, and I wasn't that familiar. He sent me a couple of instruments, and it was kind of an organic development. I said, well, I really like these guitars, but this is what I would, if I had my own model guitar, this is what I would do. And, we kind of mapped it out, and there was never a time with that company where they ever said, well, we can't do that. And, which was just amazing. I mean, they were very hesitant. I wanted a steeper headstock angle on the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And as
we know,
you pay, I mean, like a Les Paul,
sure.
There's a certain string tension that's inherent when you have the shorter scale, like a Les Paul. If you don't have that pronounced break angle over the nut into the tuning machines, to me, the guitar doesn't feel quite right.
Okay.
But you pay a price for that, in that if the guitar drops, you're going to get a headstock break, or, as everyone knows with Les Pauls, that's
sure.
If there's ever going to be a break on a Les Paul, that's it. And they were very hesitant about doing that because they hadn't done it before. And I said, look, I'm well aware, of those problems. I said, but if people buy a premium guitar, a high-end guitar, I mean, you got to know that you got to watch over it. Don't leave it in a place where it's going to fall,
leaning against a wall
And I said, it's just such an important aspect of a guitar that I'm going to put my name on it. I need that string tension to be what I've grown up with since 17 when I got my first Les Paul. And so even when they were hesitant about things like that, they went, okay, we get it. And they did one prototype. And I said, make one for yourselves at the shop, to Joe Nags. I said, make one with that headstock angle and you play it, and then pick up one without that headstock angle and tell me I'm not right. You know? And he called me and said, yep, there's a big difference. So, it is the guitar that I've always wanted, that's the most comfortable. I mean, it's great that other people like it.
Yeah.
When people invest in a guitar, I'm always honored when somebody, send me a message that they've bought one and they saved for it, I'm honored by that. And I try and have a personal relationship with everyone that buys one of my model guitars. I will answer their questions, and because it's a big deal to me,
For sure. Well, yeah, it's not like it's like a $300 overseas guitar. Someone's really making a financial commitment to that guitar. And it's
Absolutely.
Nice to have a little bit of relationship. And I actually noticed something on your website today too, on your store. I've got a link in the description down for that as well too. But people can actually buy signed backplates from you as well for that guitar.
Yeah, we offer a signed backplate, and sometimes I always tell people that concerning that guitar, if you're willing to wait, deal directly with Nags, call them up, and because there are a lot of options available for that guitar. There's different pickups, or if they want to know, my guitars are all loaded with different pickups. There's other options available. Get exactly the guitar of your dreams, because I believe these are guitars that'll, be in people's families for a lifetime and get handed down to kids and things like that.
I agree. And something's really funny. When my first introduction to Nags, I know the history of the company. I know the history of Joe. And when I first saw the guitars, the headstock is what always threw me for a loop. And I just couldn't gravitate towards the headstock at first. And I know that's one of the hardest things as a guitar manufacturer. You can't have the typical S-type that's licensed by Fender. I mean, even Eddie Van Halen has to license the headstock, with EVH gear.
Right.
It just happens that way. And you can't have the banana, because Gibson Kramer owns that. Blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's tough. And so sometimes you got guys coming out with like crazy trapezoid looking things or, but now that I've seen them so many times, especially I think once you see it in the hands of players like yourself and the Rappaports and everybody else out there using them, I think you're like, okay, this is something. It means something. It means something to Joe. Obviously, that's something that's personal to him. I now I've gravitated towards it and I like it. But something I saw, this was really funny. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how I discovered this. But Josie had sent me a few pictures of you for the promo for the show, and she sent me a couple awesome photos of you with the guitar. And what did I use? I used one of you holding the ray gun. But looking closely at the guitar, at the headstock, I could see, or at the nut, I didn't realize on your model, and maybe it's the same on some of the other ones with Floyd's, the nut is or the locking nut is behind the nut. Is that something of your choice, or is that something that they do? So they physically have a nut and
I think that was is it a Leopard guitar?
Yep.
Right, yeah. That was an experiment that we did with that's a Floyd FRX system.
Okay.
because this is about well over a year before I did the Severn, which has a traditional Floyd, a Godot licensed Floyd. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, let's see if I can, retrofit the Floyd onto the existing SSC single cutaway model.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to hack up the guitar if it didn't work out. So we had the FRX system fitted to that guitar, and that locking piece actually is part of the truss rod cover.
Oh, okay, that explains it. Because I couldn't actually see your trem because you had your hand over it, so that makes 100% total sense. I'm familiar with that tremolo now because and it's got kind of like the little V, like a V thing at the bottom of the Floyd, so it's a flush mount Floyd Rose or surface mount, so you can stick it on a Les Paul or whatever.
Yeah. It didn't work out for me particularly on that guitar, so we pulled the tremolo. I believe we pulled the tremolo off of it and put a standard tailpiece on it or something, which is that's why I didn't want to go in and, do the whole Floyd thing on it.
Yeah.
But now that I have the Severn, that guitar, I think with a Floyd, there's some guys who are able to work a Floyd into a Gibson scale. Mm-hmm. But for me, that Fender scale and Floyd is what I'm really used to.
Certainly. There's a few rare breeds out there like Alex Lifeson from Rush. He does it a lot now. I mean, obviously he's not touring with Rush anymore, but he's one of the examples I use that does it very, very well. One of your buddies and one of my mutual friends, Mark Day from over at Fractal, that guy, he can rock a Floyd on a Gibson, can he?
Yeah, there's a young guy named Sammy Bowler who who endorses Friedman amplifiers.
Okay. Yeah,
incredible guitar player. So I did some clinics with him, Detroit and Chicago, and he's got a Les Paul fitted with a Floyd, and he smokes on that, and it's just he's used to it. He knows how to keep it in tune, and it works for him. But for me, I think the way to go has always been the longer scale with the Floyd.
Well, that's the thing too. I've seen over the years, using like some of your old promo photos, you were rocking a really cool black Gibson Les Paul. So you want the Les Paul style guitar, you're going to use like that, or now of course your signature nags with a hardtail. You want the Floyd, you go to the Severn, and very similar to back in the day with like your Hamers. Were they Kaler back in the day, or was it a Floyd type guitar? I forget.
It was a Floyd.
It was a Floyd. Okay.
Floyd.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Did you have Kalers at all on any of your guitars? What did you think of those?
Tried it on one guitar.
Yeah. It didn't work. I know. I wasn't a real fan of it either. And it's really funny. I'll share a really funny story with you. There's a company that I work with, Dava Picks. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them. They're pretty cool. They make a cool guitar pick. And been with them since like around 2000. And so I'm having this conversation one day with Dave Story. He's the owner of Dava Picks. I think he's down in New Mexico or somewhere in that area down there. But I embarrassed myself. You never know who you're talking to because we got talking about tremolos. And I said, oh, don't even get me started on this Kaler. That the worst, the worst thing ever invented. And he goes, oh, did you know that I'm the co-founder of that? and I had to backpedal a little bit. And I was like, oh, how do you get out of this one, right? And because I'm I like to dive bomb, and on the Kalers you really couldn't do that. It was more almost, I don't want to use the word Bigsby, but a softer bend, right?
Right, very soft and good for subtle.
Yeah,
but we weren't subtle in the 80s.
No. The way I look at that, I would kind of compare it to maybe a little bit today. PRS has a nice tremolo on their guitars, the floating Fender style, tremolo, and it's like that. You can actually use it, like a flutter. No, I shouldn't say a flutter. That's not the right term, but a nice vibrato with it.
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. Let's jump over and say hi to a bunch of people. Hopefully they're still hanging on with us here. I think their internet issue is workable anyways, for sure. Got a bunch of people. Let me see here. Jason Wade is here. Damon Doherty. Todd, a.k.a. Soda Pop. Let me see here. Alan Hollers, Scott Ruse, Richard Henry. He's over in 2 a.m. over in Northern Ireland. He heard you're coming on the show, and he has to stay up, so he's having some coffee. Big fan of yours. Daryl McMillan. Let me see. Quentin James is here. Let's scroll down a little bit further here, and I apologize if I miss anyone. Alan Holler. Amber Gray is here. Thanks for tuning in. Ron Bain, hello from Elliott Lake, Ontario. Another fellow Canadian. Very, very nice. Okay. Nice. Joe B. Technical difficulties. We are having a little bit. If the live stream seems to be a little laggy, just go back after it's done. It should catch itself back up. I do believe it's on YouTube's end. Okay, here we go. And I think I know the answer to this, and I'll let you answer it. Sean Close is saying, ask Steve if he's using his signature bare-knuckle pickups.
Yes. The SSC nags, which is the single cut, utilizes it's pretty much indistinguishable from my Bare-Knuckle signature pickup, which is the Rebel Yell. But the Rebel Yell was tested before I had a NAGS endorsement, and that pickup we went through about 8 different versions of that pickup on the road, and I was playing it with Les Pauls. And so I was asking for more kind of upper mids, 400, 500K, to give it a kind of like a, an older style JB or something, or, just give it a little bit of a honk to it, you know. And when I landed on the final version of that, it definitely had a resonant peak of, upper mid, higher mids, I would say, not upper, but higher mids. And I loaded that pickup initially into the Nag Steve Stevens, and I realized I didn't need that peak anymore with this guitar, because the guitar had a resonant, I guess, handmade instrument it rings very true. Whatever pickup you put in that guitar, the way that pickup is intended to sound is going to sound true in that guitar. If you put a patent applied for style pickup, no matter what it is, it's going to be very open and not no resonant peaks in it, like a patent applied for. So I revisited. I just basically it's a Rebel Yell pickup without that slight little bit of resonant peak in it, but it's so subtle. I mean, you could put a Rebel Yell pickup in that guitar and just go to your mid control on your amp and just turn it one little notch, and it would sound exactly the same. So that was the only difference. On the new Severn, I designed a totally new pickup because string scale, different body style, different neck profile, different headstock, all changed everything. And I wanted the pickup that's in the SSC is not a terribly high gain pickup. It's like a patent applied for.
Okay.
Kind of very open, so you can still get those Zeppelin, Angus Young tones out of it. It sounds great with an overdrive, but it is intended to be a big open sounding guitar, classic rock guitar. The Severn is a hot rod guitar, much in the way that some of my 80s guitars are. So
Shredder.
we redesigned the pickup. It's much hotter. It's much thumpier. It's mounted directly into the body as well. So there's a lot of chug factor to it. It's a modern guitar. It's more of a metal guitar. I'm not ashamed to say. Whereas my existing model is like classic rock guitar.
Yeah. Something I'm struggling with to learn about when it comes to pickups. Like, I've been a high gain guy all my entire life, and obviously you would know, like with Eddie Van Halen's style and with his Wolfgangs and things like that, they're a hot pickup, like extremely hot pickups. Right. But a couple of guests I've talked to in the past, well, I actually talked to one guest who told me about another, giant in the industry. But talking to Marc Kendall, he was on the show from Great White, and I wouldn't have known this, but like learning his style and listening to his music growing up as a kid and teen, he doesn't use high gain pickups. In fact, his pickups are like extremely low gain. He says he wants whether it be a distortion pedal or the amplifier to do the work. And he was talking about Billy Gibbons. I know you've probably crossed paths with him many times. And he says Billy Gibbons is even worse when it comes to less gain. Yeah. Share in your mindset what that does for the guitar and the amplifier by going the opposite route that you and I and a lot of guys would do.
Less gain on the pickup allows more of the tonality of the guitar.
Okay.
That's the way I look at it. The higher gain pickups, and certainly when you get into EMGs and things like that, which I have a couple of guitars loaded with EMGs, which I love as well, but they're specific to that overdriven, in your face, brutal, nothing subtle thing about it. And you could, to me, you could load an EMG in any guitar.
It's still
going to like pulverize the amp, at least the ones that I have used. So yeah, I mean, it really depends what you as a player hear in your head and who your influences are. Everybody, still has a blueprint in their head of I want to sound like the first time I heard, let's say, Van Halen 1 or Queen, you know, and that's just something that's in on our guitar playing DNA, and sometimes, you know, those kind of sounds require a low gain pickup or a high gain pickup. You know, obviously Jimmy Page used low gain pickups. I think one of the interesting things, though, is I have about 3 of those early EVH Music Man guitars.
Yeah.
And although those pickups, the DiMarzio and then quite high gain, if you look at how far away that pickup is from the strings, it compensates for the high gain of the pickup.
That's right.
So it ends up being not such a high gain pickup, but a very I love the sound of those guitars. I think they're really, and now with the Axis, I still always, when I'm going into a session, I bring one with me. I think they really hit on a great guitar. But yeah, the pickups are kind of low from the strings.
They are. It's almost like having a great gain microphone, but I mean, you're back 6 feet from it. It's not necessarily a high gain microphone anymore, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. I had a guy on the show the other day on my other show, on the Helix Hour show I do. You'd probably appreciate this, being that you like the Music Man, Richie Castellano from Blue Oyster Cult. And he, it's funny because he has a whole bunch. He's a Music Man Ernie Ball endorser. And so as soon as I see a bunch of Van Halen guitars hanging on the wall, I automatically think the guy is a Van Halen fan, guy or girl. In his case, he's got a few of them up there. He's got the Axis. He's got a couple of Music Mans. I said, so I just want to ask you a question. Did Eddie Van Halen, get you into those guitars? And it was a really funny story. He shared the story with me. He says, no, it's the other way around. His dad's a player, and Richie's younger than me. He's probably in his late 30s. Maybe early 40s, and his dad was a guitar player, always had guitars around, and owns a music store. And he was telling us this funny story that every guitar was fair game, even if it was his own dad's guitars. If someone says, I want a 60 or a 72 Les Paul, okay, I got one at home, I'll bring it in for you. So long story short, Richie's playing his dad's Les Paul forever, and he goes to a band practice one day. He goes to grab it off the stand and says, Dad, where's my guitar? And he goes, what do you mean my guitar? That's my guitar, son, and I sold it. A customer wanted it. So he's in trauma now. What am I going to do, because this is my guitar? And he liked that short scale, all that kind of stuff. He goes, well, look, I think you might like something like this, right? And so they're looking around. This was Music Man just coming out with the Eddie Van Halen at the time. And they're calling around local shops. No one had one. Found one over here at this other shop. They go over there, they try it. He fell in love with this guitar. And because of that guitar, he discovered Van Halen. So it was a really neat flip compared to what we usually see. You know, we go buy our artist guitars.
You know what always amazed me about that guitar, though, is the necks are tiny on that guitar.
Yep.
And Ed's got huge hands.
I know. He does.
Like I know Luke and I have smaller hands. We've always gone, we have to work harder, and we'd like point at Ed and be like, yeah, he's got it easy. But always amazed me that that a guy who really doesn't need a smaller neck would choose to have that small. I mean, it's even small for me.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I think what it is with him too, it's so funny too. You see photos of him sometime. Somebody posted a photo on Facebook the other day. He was using this is probably about 8 years ago. He's taking a picture with a camera, and you see his fingers. And I've shook the man's hand before, and I never even really noticed it then. But when you see him holding something, it's like alien appendages on his fingers. You know, and those stretches he would do back in the day. I mean, still does. It's just like you do that, and you almost give yourself carpal tunnel. Like it literally hurts. But some of the guitars are even smaller. Like you probably haven't tried the Indonesian series of the. I've got a couple of those here as well too. That's the Wolfgang made overseas. Okay, and it's even smaller. You feel like you're holding. It's like I like kind of like the old Kramers, like a broomstick. It's like you're holding a broomstick. But if you think of it too, Eddie would always do that thing like, not just Eddie, but Jimi Hendrix, all those guys using the thumb as a capo almost. And that's cool to see these. Sometimes you can't do that on a big, wide, fat profile neck.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. So that was a very good answer for Sean Close there about the Bare-Knuckles pickups. Quentin James is saying Eric's having issues with internet. By the way, I heard Quentin James is going to be a grandpa. He's got a little girl on the way. So that's congratulations, Quentin. He's one of our regulars. So I wanted to say that. And Jack is saying, please ask about Deadland Ritual. We will talk on that. We'll just kind of dance around that a little bit tonight because we don't want to burst any bubbles or there's some, protocol we have to follow with that. So we'll dance lightly on that one. Let me see here. Alan Haller. Let me see here. Let's see if there's anything else I missed. Question I wanted to ask you as well, too, because it's funny. People say, oh, if you're in Canada, do you know the Joneses? They live over here. And I kind of think that way about people in the States. Okay, you're in California, so everything is around you and surrounds you. But I had Michael Charvel on the show a while back, probably about a month back. We were talking about the campfire that kind of took a lot of people, took a lot of businesses and homes and things like that. And obviously, Wayne Guitars. Were you guys in the vicinity of the fires at all? Were you safe?
No, we're not. Although that was so gnarly, that fire, that the day after. I mean, I'm pretty far away from it. I'm more Hollywood area, but there was soot and covering our cars and stuff, and it, and that fire was out in in the Malibu area, and. But yeah, I mean, I have friends of mine that were sending me photographs of flames right up in their backyard, and there's people that lost their houses. The one that really, really broke my heart was the what's his name? He's a jazz guitar player. Lost his house. Lee Rittenauer.
Oh, no way!
House. Yeah. And he posted photos, and you could tell that his whole, it just really broke my heart, because he's not like a Kardashian or somebody who's a journeyman guitar player like all of us. And beautiful house that he probably put everything into in the studio, and and it was. I just hope he can rebuild and come back from that. And I know Mike Garson, the famous piano player from the David Bowie years, also works with Nine Inch Nails, and he lost his house, and he's another, working. These are working musicians who are having to pay bills, and and not mega millionaires. There's a lot of people that really got hurt by this fire. So
that's the thing. And Michael shared such a horrendous story. He was telling me, I'm not sure if you read some of the interviews with him, but when the fires were coming through the hills and the mountains there, or the forest, wherever they're at, they were actually in Paradise, or wherever that area is in that vicinity.
Okay. Yeah.
But Michael was saying, the fire embers are coming down. They're actually touching his house, and he's like, okay, I know we're gonna have to get out of here. And his first thought was to get the car. And this is where something a lot of us take for granted. Like I run my car on a quarter of a tank of gas a lot of times. And you got to make a retreat. You should have that car full of gas. Well, he couldn't get the car out, so he decides to get on a bike. And as he's riding his bike, like a mountain bike, whatever, he's riding out to the roadway, and the roadways were all blocked off. And he saw about 5 or 6 people that were from his street, where the fire came in so quick, they didn't even get out of their cars. They were engulfed in their cars.
Oh my God!
Isn't that horrific?
Yeah.
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 But that's the thing too. Like you're talking about Lee Rittenauer, like I mean, and any guitar player of of that caliber, and the history and the things that they've seen. People think, okay, well, you got insurance and that's all good, but first of all, he escaped with his life, so okay, that's awesome. And didn't lose any family members that we know of or anything like that, and some of these other people too. But these guitars, like some of your guitars too, some of the things, you look at a guitar that you may have had that's been with you for your life, and you're like, this guitar has seen more than a lot of people ever see in life. Parts of the world, and the guitars take on that history and that vibe and that mojo, and you just can't go buy another one and replace it.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of musicians that a lot of musicians in California have home studios, and the thing that I'm always struck with is the recording tapes and things like that. Lee's from an era where everything was on analog. You can't replace that stuff. I know. It's heartbreaking.
Do a lot of guys, okay, like I don't do any recording other than just little things here at home, but someone like yourself who is an engineer and whatnot and is deeply involved in the scene, is today a time where we put stuff on the cloud a lot now for safety measures? Do you guys?
I mean, this fire makes you think twice, because I back up everything onto another drive. Right. But if a fire comes,
it's gone.
That other drive is. I know recording studios do back everything up to a cloud situation or a RAID system or something, but I don't have something like that here.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's one of those things you never think it's going to happen to you, and that's I know. And we're bad for it here in Canada as well too. My better half here, Nocturnal Butterfly, Sandra, she's always like, we need a survival kit. Yes dear. And then we don't usually get tornadoes up here, but we had a series of about 4 warnings come through, and then you're like, okay, what do we do? You know what I mean? Okay, grab our iPhones and go. That's all we got for survival. No water, no matches, or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's best to be prepared. I'm gonna say I had a couple more people here, and then we're gonna come back, and I think you're gonna maybe possibly do a little bit of playing for us tonight. Is that cool?
Yeah, I mean, if people got
yeah,
have questions or
I'll have a look see if there's any questions.
Requests.
It's kind of funny on my other show I do, the Helix Hour. It's all a Line 6 based show.
Yeah.
I started a thing accidentally where the guests would come on and they would all give us one of their celebrity patches off their Helix, and we could have, like, we could play like on, Jeff Schroeder from Smashing Pumpkins. We could play on his rig, or we could play on Chris from Blackstone Cherry's rig, and so that was cool. Fans loved it. And then Paul Gilbert come on the show here about a month or two back, and then after Paul was Steve Lynch from Autograph, and they're teaching us how to play and stuff. I'm like, I got myself in another corner where I'm gonna have to ask my guests to do that all the time. And I thought, if you'd be gracious enough, we'll try that too.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me just see where we left off, and I'll see if I can find it here. Brad Miller's here, Les Bellin, Gary Holt is here, DJ Asterisk, JD Gonzalez, Ricky Mees, Carlo Santin, my Canadian brother, says, love your playing and approach to guitar. Definitely an inspiration to so many people. And I love talking to you about this before last time you were here as well too. We kind of touched base on how you've been so successful over the years, and you're one of those guys who does, even though you could easily be in the spotlight as the guitar solo guy, and the shredder. I think that's why Billy's loved you for so long, because you work and make everyone else in the band a better musician as well too, including yourself. But I think that's nice. I think a lot of people can take maybe some notes from you. Some of the, I don't want to say the Yngwie Malmsteens, I don't want to diss Yngwie Malmsteen, but some of the people out there that could kind of take some lessons and work to make your mates better, and they'll make you better too.
Yeah, I think that's it's possibly an age thing, because when I got my first electric guitar, would have been 1972.
Okay.
13, and we didn't have solo guitar players out there. We had bands,
right?
And and it was when you bought a record or you loved your favorite group or went to their concert, it really was about watching the interplay, and you didn't just go. When I went to see Yes for the first time, the thing that struck me was how well constructed their parts were to work with each other. They were very orchestral in their approach, and I always felt that Zeppelin was another band like that, or The Who. I can't even name you Pete Townsend guitar solos,
right?
But everybody knows the Who songs, and they're So I think that's that's just what I was brought up on, and I've done instrumental records, and it was actually really difficult for me, because I was so used to writing something to accompany someone else. And I think as a young kid, even when I'd see, I remember seeing footage on TV of Elvis Presley, and my mom would go, "Oh, he's isn't he great?" or whatever, and I was looking at Scotty Moore, going, "I want to be that guy." Mm-hmm. Or when I saw Zeppelin, I wanted to be Page, not. I'm just comfortable being that kind of player in the band. I mean, I've played enough shows with enough really super famous bands over the years. I mean, we're talking, from 1981 till now, and festivals and all of this. And there is nothing more powerful when a band gets on stage and everyone in the, up to 80,000 people knows the song or the riff, or and the whole audience does that thing.
Yep.
I've never seen an audience do that for a guitar solo. I'm sorry, but
I know.
And if you have, the crazy thing is, when I went to South America, if you have memorable guitar solos, the audience will sing it while you play it. And that's like goosebumps. It's like it happened with Rebel Yell, which it's not terribly technical, but you can sing it, and I've always thought that's the real power in being a musician, for me, and I respect guys who are, technically proficient, but it's a fine line, give them a little bit of that razzle dazzle, but also give them something that they can remember as well. I think that's why we both revere, Eddie Van Halen so well, because, he's such a lyrical player, as well as a technical player, as well as a songwriter, mm-hmm. as well as a rhythm player, he is the whole thing. It's not just one aspect of it. And that to me is the true sign of greatness,
I agree. And here's what I tell a lot of people too, and I sometimes use the term kids when I say kids on guitar, but anybody that's under 20 years old, anybody that's under 25 years old is considered a kid to me at my age. But, I say, like, you're an example. When people try to learn your riffs, try to learn your riffs, and okay, I can focus on the leads a little bit. I know you're over here and doing this, whatever. Then I try to do the rhythm, and it's like, okay, now I'm embarrassed because and Eddie Van Halen too. It's like these kids can nail these solos 7 ways from Sunday, and then, okay, now let's try to do the rhythm. And I've even done it where I'm like, I listen back and my timing is horrible. And it's like, oh my God, it's way harder than you think.
Yeah, and the rhythm is the stuff that when I'm on stage, at least when I'm locked in on a rhythm and it's groovy with the drummer and the bass player, that's just this feeling that you this energy.
Yep.
That you become strong. You become greater than this. The sum is greater than the parts, and you just get a shit-eating grin, and you're like, I love soloing and everything like that, but you don't get that feeling. It's kind of it's a totally different thing, Yeah. So I've always been a band guy. I've always wanted to be in bands and and create stuff as a unit,
That's fantastic. And I know what you mean by that. I've used the term here before. When everything is going just right, even if you're in that rhythm pocket and you don't even want to venture over to the lead territory, I describe that as, you've got a car that will go 100 miles per hour on a good day. That's its throttle. It's capped at 100, won't go any faster than that no matter what. But one day, maybe you're going downhill, you got the wind behind you, the temperature's right, and you're doing 120. That car's not supposed to do that, but it is. And that's the same thing that happens to you as a musician when all the planets are aligned, you're connected to the audience, and you're doing that 120 where you're like, how can I be doing this? I can't go that fast. Yeah, you just fit right in there. And we'll talk about energy too in a moment. We'll come back and talk a little bit about Deadland and how that come about. But why don't we put the camera over on you? You grab something that's comfortable there, and you can take us through any riffs, any tricks and tips, whatever you want to show us. And I know the audience will love it.
Okay, let's see what they request.
Okay,
let's see if they have.
Let's go with comments here.
I mean, the stuff like Rebel Yell. I mean, it's available online. I've done little demos of how to play that and stuff. They can probably find that elsewhere.
Yep, that's right.
It's something else.
Okay, requests for lessons. Let's say comment away. Oh, you got 7 there right now.
This was the actual first one. This was the prototype, and it's just I took this out with me on tour, and we didn't change. I didn't end up changing anything because this is in all honesty, this is based on an existing model. So all we did with this is I rearranged the selectors to where I'm really comfortable getting to everything.
Nice.
And simplified it. We put a Floyd on it. We direct mounted the pickups. These are the signature Bare-Knuckles, which are actually they're only available in this guitar. I got a little bit a little bit crazy, and I didn't want to. I just felt that these pickups are right for this guitar. Let's not confuse people. And
stunning guitar.
I got a Floyd on it, and it's really just great, solid guitar.
All the purple accents are beautiful.
Most stays well in tune.
Fantastic. John Kerry saying "Eyes Without a Face."
Eyes Without a Face. That's an acoustic song, okay. But I can play the middle bit for him. How's that?
Okay, let's try that. That's perfect. That's awesome. Now here's one. Of course, I mean, I'm sure you've been requested this one a million times over, and this is more soundtrack. And I used to practice this all the time too. A little bit of Top Gun.
Ah, yeah. The weird thing is that I do a bit of it with Billy Idol, and during the course of my solo, and with him I do it in E. So I've gotten so used to. I think on the recorded version it might be in C.
Okay.
Knowing Harold Faltermeyer is probably in C because him being keyboard based.
Right.
But in E, I can.
Stellar. That's fantastic. Jonathan Stubbs is saying jazzy breakdown from Man for All Seasons.
Oh wow,
that's tough. That's tough one. We can leave that for another day.
Yeah, that's one I haven't probably played since 1988.
No problem. That's I don't want to ever put you on the spot. Let me see here. What did we also? So without doing necessarily Rebel Yell, people talk about that a lot. But the one thing I want to ask you about that, because that's another thing I think is an awesome technique that you can maybe at least teach people how to get the what's the word I'm looking for, ambidextrous, so you can actually, like Eddie and little guitars will do the tremolo picking on the high open string, and then he'll hammer with the other hand, and a lot of people just can't do that pat the head and rub the stomach kind of thing. Right. Can you give any tips for people to be able to do that? I think maybe a lot of it comes from your flamenco background, but how can you get into that mindset?
It actually, more than flamenco, it came from folk players like Leo Kotke, who would do, there was a blues thing where he would do it. You know, this kind of thing. I mean, obviously the chord shape for the intro is right? It's like an B minor ninth. Okay. But I always tell people start with the forget it, don't even try and do it with a guitar pick. I kind of like tuck it in this way.
Okay.
But you could do it without. But live, I have to switch to a guitar pick quickly. So usually I tell people to just get so if the tempo in the case of that song, it's like 164 BPM. Just get that smooth. It's just really like a woodpecker on a tree, you know? It's just, all it is sixteenths in time. And then the bottom part is. It's just a matter of, I don't know, to me, like, it's not so much ambidextrous as just like, because everything's in time with each other.
Right.
It's just a matter of like getting, start with it slow. And then just work your way up to it. So,
That's a perfect tip. And maybe just take those shapes and move them up and down the neck at different scales, different patterns.
Yeah. I mean, I started to do, there's another one that I did that's a little bit, it's the same idea, but it's. Same idea, but that's taking it a little bit further. But Rebel Yell is just really just sixteenths on the top two strings with both fingers, and then the thumb is doing the independent part, the syncopated part. I think what helps also is it would be hard for me to do that if I didn't anchor my pinky on the guitar. That's another little cue. So if you got a solid anchor, like it would be really hard to do it without that. So the pinky, I kind of wrap it on the pickup a little bit. But you can put it on the bridge. That kind of gives you the grip, the basis of. I couldn't even think about doing it without doing that. So that may be a good tip for people.
Very good tip. So a place to have your anchor there, and it's kind of a grip, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. You hold on to the guitar, and then you can get those 16ths going, get that smooth, you know, maybe try it with a metronome or something, and then just throw in the bass thing. And
that's perfect.
That's kind of how I practiced it, you know.
It's very, very cool. And I like the way, I watched some of the lessons that you've done at that particular lesson as well. Rebel Yell and White Wedding were two good examples where you show how you don't step on Billy's toes with the melody, and you're doing counter melodies that actually build that song even bigger. And I think a couple times where you can really appreciate, I've heard some of the radio gigs you've done where you and Billy just be acoustic, and that acoustic guitar, you still translate so well. It sounds like at least 2 or 3 guitars playing, and it's just one for the most part. And being able that you can do that bass rhythm at the same time, kind of a feel, it really gives us big spectrum.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the fact that I don't think there's any song that we ever wrote together that started on electric, because, you know, he's always got an acoustic guitar with him. And we have, you know, first and foremost, you got to find the key that's best for your singer.
Right.
Okay, so you get an idea for a song. Okay, hey, check this out. What do you think about these chords? Okay, all right. Then you find the right key for them, and then usually it's just a matter of with Billy. Usually we get we have a chorus first. It's just that's the way our songwriting partnership works. You know. Get a chorus together, then we kind of like deviate into the verse, and then obviously, you know, some sort of bridge. You know, there's definitely a
method.
There is a method. We try and break it as much as possible, but you know, songs are songs, and you know, you have to take people on a journey. But by and large, most of our material has started on acoustic guitar, so I think that's why it translates to an acoustic environment.
Yeah, and I think also too, I've said this many times to different guests on the show and just, you know, friends and fans, that if a song speaks very, very well written on an acoustic guitar, you know there's a world of possibility out there. Or it's sometimes written. I have a lot of compositions started on piano. Eddie Van Halen will do that as well too. He'll come up with a pattern and a riff and chorus and stuff like that on piano, and sounds beautiful. And then you hear it on guitar, and you think, well, that was always written on guitar. No, it started over here. You know, it's just amazing. But good songwriting will come through.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, Billy and I have done a number of shows where it's just been the two of us, and I'll sometimes be the only guitar up there, and it's a little bit scary at first because you're naked, but it's really satisfying when it works out that way, because dynamically, you know, if you want to take something in another direction, or you want to go really quiet or really raucous, you don't have to telegraph it to a bunch of guys. It's like an immediate kind of dynamic thing. I'll just lower down and he'll go with it. And there's a whole other thing at play when we do those kind of shows like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, the dynamics you could actually bring back. I mean, bring it down to just a whisper, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then go back up with it.
That's the thing Zeppelin was so good at. You know, those guys, you know, they just listened so intently to each other. Obviously great songs, great players, great singer, but they always had this dynamic thing going on that sometimes it was really pronounced in live more so than on the records. But you know, it's emotional when you do that, because people are you know, you can't help but be affected by it as an audience.
Yeah, definitely emotionally tied to it. How about before you put your guitar away, and this is putting you on the spot, but your best feel, or we'll say let's do something that Van Halen inspired. Doesn't have to be a Van Halen passage.
Wow.
It can be.
Well, it's little. You know, there was a tune on the Vince Neil record called "Can't Have Your Cake and Eat It Too."
Okay.
And it started. It wasn't intended to sound like Jeff Beck, but it ended up sounding like Jeff Beck. But originally it was. It was. I was thinking Van Halen.
Yeah.
It sounded like, to me, it ended up sounding a bit like Beck for something. But then when the song kicks in. Let's see if I remember the solo.
That's
it's
fantastic.
Definitely probably the most Van Halen influenced thing I did.
Well, when you had the gain back, it sounded almost like Light Up the Sky a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was definitely influenced by that. But people said, wow, reminds me of Jeff Beck. And I went, well, that's not quite what I was thinking of.
But that's cool.
But yeah, there was a lot. That record was really the height of the kind of, it was 1990, and like a lot of heavy guitars and solos were really long and stuff like that. And, I definitely, there's a couple of things, a couple of tunes on there. I gave a nod to Aerosmith and a nod to, there's some layered things where I did a lot of multi-overdubbing with, I had a Vox AC30 and did some Brian May thing. I always loved kind of like throwing flavors in of my favorite guitar players. And obviously, Ed's, one of the greatest. And, when it came time for a fast up-tempo thing, I said, it'd be great to throw in something like that,
Fantastic. Well, you do it so well, man. I mean, it's you can tell that DNA is in you. All these people that you listened to growing up, people that you've played with, and shared stages with, and everywhere in between. It gets in you, and you can't get it out. But that's really cool. I love that syncopated stuff. Like look at Van Halen, like I said, mentioned Light Up the Sky, Panama, all these little. When's he coming in with this? It's just so damn tricky. But I think it was.
It was interesting because I worked before I ever heard of Van Halen or anything. I was in a cover band in New York, and we did a lot of, we did some Jeff Beck, a lot of Yes, a lot of Zeppelin, and Jeff Beck was a big hero, as well as the early '70s guys. And Alan Holsworth shows up with Tony Williams' Lifetime, and but it was interesting in that myself and the drummer in the band was very into. He built RPA. He was very into electronics and how to get this kind of overdriven sound out of our gear. We always had I had a combination of high watts and Marshall and stuff, and he was one of the first guys to we brought our amp to somebody, because at that time there was no master volumes in our Marshalls, to get a master volume put in it. So I was kind of on this path of using old plexis and the sound, playing through a late '60s plexi through Celestion greenbacks. It kind of pushed you in a way of playing this percussive style.
Okay.
That when I heard the first Van Halen record, although it absolutely took my head off and blew my mind, when I heard it, I said, that's got to be an old plexi, there's nothing else that's going to, how did he get it to sound that good? I mean, obviously they captured it. Ted Templeman and Don Landy captured his sound the way I don't believe anyone else could have captured it better. I believe that they produced it, having that one guitar. I mean, if you compare it to the Gene Simmons demos, I mean, having Ed untethered and having to remember doubled guitar, just put that guitar a little bit over on the left side with a beautiful reverb and let Ed be Ed. That was the smartest thing that they did. And it really, but yeah, the first time I heard it, I went, I didn't know how he was doing the dive bombs and staying in tune.
Yeah, of course.
That was a whole new, nobody expected that. And the tapping. I mean, I was familiar with Steve Hackett touching on that, but to make it I mean, I didn't know if it was a guitar or a synth when I heard Eruption. Honestly, I went, what the, like everyone did.
Everyone said the same thing. Well,
I mean, now I think young players hear it.
They know.
It's kind of an accepted thing, but for us, in what year was that record? 77? Was it?
Late 77 or 78.
When you heard Eruption in that year,
mm-hmm.
it was as groundbreaking as all you experienced. It's just like, how did he do that? That's a guitar? You got to be kidding, So, it was mind-blowing.
It certainly was. I've said this to a lot of guests that come on the show. I used to talk more about it, more so, but it depends on the person's knowledge of Van Halen and things like that as well, too. But even if people aren't knowledgeable of Van Halen, I always just like to feel it out and ask them, like, their opinions on the emergence of Van Halen and Eddie Van Halen onto the scene of guitar. And I mean, take away Eddie's talent and all the kind of cool things he can do as a player and a songwriter, but look what he's done to manufacturing. I mean, you have gear right now behind you that's influenced in a way, somewhere, gain stages, things like that. The guitars you're playing right now have a lot of that DNA with locking tremolos,
Absolutely.
all that kind of stuff. The manufacturing world has changed, and a lot of people are working because of that man.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's much like, there is only one Eddie Van Halen, and much like everything else, once something comes along and is groundbreaking and makes money,
mm-hmm.
Then you have all these other, I want to do that too afterwards. And unfortunately for me, being in New York, we didn't have the LA gunslinger guitar thing happening where all these other guys came wannabe Eds, which I never really got. In New York, we appreciated Van Halen for what it was, just like we appreciated, the Ramones or they were original and did their own thing. And, but yeah, it's still they're just like those records are just, you can't pigeonhole them. There's a little bit of punk energy. There's a bit of metal. There's a bit of pop. There's, hooks galore. I mean, without those backing vocals and those kind of, Van Halen made records that not only guys like, but girls like, as well. It was, it was something in that band for everyone, no matter what,
I agree. And I've said this a lot of times too, is there's people that either love David Lee Roth or they hate him. There's everywhere in between. And, but what I think a lot of that swing sound, I've said this before, I think that swing and that intense rhythm, and I don't know, just blues too, is the fact that there's three sources, I think, that I attribute it to. One, Eddie and Alex would play together for hours on end without a bass player. From the time they get up, have breakfast, whatever, till, just Eddie and Alex. So you don't have a bass player, so you got to fill in the pocket. Number two, their dad is as talented could be, and the influence of their mother too, that counts as well. But then David Lee Roth. You bring David Lee Roth in there, a guy that technically couldn't sing the best, so he had to make up with his shortcomings. He brought in flair. He brought in even wardrobe that was not necessarily accepted, but then he brought the, R&B, soul. And I think that has really shaped the band. I mean, if it would have been Sammy Hagar first, and I like Sammy too, I like Dave better, but okay, so that whole thing, and then like you mentioned too with the engineering of the record, it could be a totally different world had those key elements not been in place. Yeah.
I remember as when I first joined Billy Idol, and I mean, he came through the whole 1977 English punk thing of Sex Pistols and, Generation X and all this. When I first joined him, Van Halen's Pretty Woman was a hit. And he said to me, "Hey, that guitar player's pretty good, isn't he?" Even, he went, "How's he get that sound?" I went, "It's a long story." But, even for someone like Billy, who was a punk rock guy, there was something about Ed's playing that connected on a sonic and simpler, it's a lot of Ed's stuff is pretty, other than solo, I mean, a lot of the rhythm stuff is just in the groove and simple and swaggery. But you're right about Dave, and he brought an element of fun to the proceedings.
And what's more contagious than fun?
Yeah, I mean, it could have, there's bands like that who get so serious and technically minded and all that, and at the end of the day, it's not fun anymore.
I know. I never want to like, cast judgment on bands, like the shredder bands. And I like to say, like, I don't like to do math on guitar, if that makes any sense. I sucked at math, and I don't want to have to calculate in like an algebra equation to figure out something on guitar. You just like, play and go, right? That's where I like a lot of these guys that can just get up and do an all-star jam and completely out of their element. And you're like, oh my God, what is this? This is awesome, because they're thrown to the wolves kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like the players who are secure in what they do. I've shared the stage with Billy Gibbons probably a dozen times, and I've seen him get up with other guitar players, and I've seen him play a show after Zach has shredded the stage, and Gibbons gets up there and he's Billy Gibbons, and he'll still play 3 freaking notes and kill people. Yeah,
and you probably got Zach off to the right watching with his mouth hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and that's security. He's not influenced by, he knows and is secure in what he does. And but that takes years of developing your own style and your own tonality and your own, that's the hardest thing, I think, as a guitar player, is to really have that individual thing that, 3 notes, people go, yeah, that's so-and-so.
That's right.
That's a really hard thing to achieve.
Well, something that we talk about here a lot of times is these guitar players that you've mentioned, and I've been talking about, including yourself, high gain players. But you posted something on Facebook, it was either today or yesterday, but you're asking opinions from people about, clean players. Can you name some clean players, and omit the jazz players, because obviously that's pretty darn clean. Right. And I think that's where a lot of us, we like to have our high gain and our delays and all that kind of stuff to get in our comfort zone. But a lot of times we're masking some of our shortcomings. Was that something that you would recommend? I'd also like to find out who you found out and some of the best players in that poll that you kind of created. But is that something you'd recommend to some kids and guitarists out there struggling a little bit, practice a little bit cleaner, so you're hearing your flaws, hearing your successes?
Yeah, I mean, it's especially obvious. The thing that always happens for me is when you go in to record, I always you'll get a sound together, and then you'll try and clean it up and get a good take. And then you'll try and clean it up even more. Because distortion takes up a lot of sonic space. And what's really taking up that space is not note content or tone or frequencies. It's white noise So invariably every time I work with a producer, we're always trying to clean up the sound and get it rocking as clean as we possibly can. And sometimes live you want it a little bit dirtier, and there's nothing like having a guitar that doesn't sustain. It's frustrating, and but for recording I'm definitely a guy that if you listen to things like Rebel Yell, guitars are pretty clean on that, cleaner than you would think. Because when I've recorded stuff like that, it's always been a Plexi Marshall, and I never put a pedal or anything other than a solo. I mean, solos are a different thing,
sure,
but rhythms are usually pretty damn clean.
Do you ever do much reamping, like kind of give it a nice clean signal and then do some stuff after the fact, or you pretty much get your tone? No.
Yeah, I've never done that. Yeah.
Okay, I was curious to see. Let's. A lot of people are asking this question, and I know you guys are kind of delicately dancing around this until all the press comes out with Deadland. But kind of, you talk about these groups that we all grew up listening to. The Zeppelins, like you're talking about. Black Sabbath is a pretty awesome band. Influenced many of us. Van Halen, for example, as well too.
Yeah.
Playing in a band with Geezer Butler is pretty darn cool, and I'm sure he's saying the same thing about you. But how did that all come about? Can you take us a little bit? You can tell us as much or as little as you want, because I know there's going to be some press tours soon. But how did that come about, and what are your feelings on it?
Well, Frankie Perez, the singer, and I have been friends for probably over 10 years, and I've always been a big fan of Frankie's, and I've seen him come and guest with all-star bands. Matt Sorum has Kings of Chaos, and Frankie will get up, and I've seen him, get up before Steven Tyler or Billy Idol or Robin Zander or Sebastian Bach. And, after the show, people are talking about Frankie. Who the hell was that guy? And I love Corey Taylor, who's a hell of a singer.
Yes, he is.
calls Frankie Pipes, goes, Pipes, you know.
Wow.
I mean, Frankie is really well revered, and he's just, you know, although he's been in he worked with Apocalyptica.
Yeah,
right.
It's a hard one to say, yeah.
Right. But he just never found the right situation. So when it came time for me to do my solo tour in Europe, I asked Frankie, I said, look, I'm going to be doing a little Billy Idol, some Michael Jackson, you know, some Atomic Playboys. He can sing all of that. Would you be willing to go to Europe? So we went to Europe, and it was an absolute blast. And we get along great. He's just an awesome guy, not only an awesome musician. So I said, you know, this is somebody I really, you know, given the opportunity with, you know, want to work with. We had cut a demo here at my place, and I started to shop a solo deal and was very close to signing a solo deal to do another solo record. Mm-hmm. But as I've always said, I want it to be a band-oriented thing. Right. I've done the you know, Memory Crash, and I've done the flamenco thing. I want a vocal. I want my Led Zeppelin, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? I want to be in that kind of band, you know. And we were getting ready to sign, and Frankie calls me. He goes, "Hey, you know, you should talk to Matt Sorum because he would like to do something with us, and he's spoken to Geezer Butler." I went, "What? You kidding me?" And he said, "Yeah, and you know, Geezer's interested in doing something, and this could be a great band." And I literally put my solo deal on hold and spoke to Matt, and I said, wow, you know, that really could be amazing. And he said, yeah, why don't you, you know, try and come up with some things with all of these players in mind. So I just wrote the names on a piece of paper, and I said, if I was a fan, what would I expect from a band with these guys in it? So I started to put together some ideas, sent them over to Matt, sent them over to Geezer, Frankie, and it just became like an organic thing. We got a couple of ideas together, and then we just went in a rehearsal room to see if this would actually work. And it was from the moment we played, all of the aspects of our playing fit together really well, because Geezer just creates this bed. And it's really, you know, at first we were thinking about another guitar player in the band because I've always been in, you know, played with other guitar players, and, you know, it kind of fills it. Once I played with Geezer, I said, there's no room for another guitar player. His tone and his sound is, you know, whatever he does is so, you know, it's bass plus, but it really sounds like there's another guitar player in there with his use of distortion but he's very economical, and it really allowed me to, I just loved the sound that we were getting in that room. And Matt Sorum is the only drummer, I'll say this, is the only drummer I play with, and it could be in a tiny little rehearsal room, and his drums sound like a record right there in the room.
Wow.
The way he tunes them and hits them. And I've always said that to Matt. I said, I don't know what it is about you, but you sound like a record right in the room. And Dave Friedman actually has his Tone Merchants is right across the street from where we were rehearsing. And after the first day, he came over to me. He goes, I don't know what you're doing in there, but it's incredible. And he says, I can hear it from across the street. And I said, oh, yeah, I got this, you know, little band we're working with, you know. And so it was like very organic. We went in, you know, to a little rehearsal room. And then looked for a proper producer. And Geezer had worked with Greg Fiedelman on the last Black Sabbath record, and I thought, you know, great. Perfect. You know, he's already got a working relationship, and I love Greg's records, and you know, he's done the Slipknot things, and so it's kind of cool for me to get thrown in with a more aggressive. I'm not gonna. I mean, it's classic rock, you know. It's you know, but it's. I didn't have to overthink things, you know. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what microphones we used to record.
Sure.
I left that up to the pros, you know. Yep. Whereas usually when I'm working on something, I'm bringing in my own mics and all of this, and I just wanted to be you,
just yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to play guitar in a band, you know, for a change, and not have to think about what this guy's doing. And you know, I mean, these guys, how are you going to tell Geezer Butler what to play? really,
I know.
like,
Yeah.
I'd rather him tell me what to play.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you didn't go with the two guitar players, because even though what does work for you is that you've done it a million times, I like that. That's like the Van Halen thing. That's why I like those bootlegs as opposed to these polished albums. You can take off, and even though might be missing a rhythm here while you're going off on a lead, you're not going to be missing it with geezers. That is awesome.
Yeah, so it's been like really organic, and the first song that we've released, it was definitely my decision not to have a guitar solo on it.
Nice.
There are other tunes will have solos on it, but I really wanted to make a statement that this is a band. And when we got into record, everybody was really concerned about how each other was being given the space that we needed. One of the early mixes came back, and me and Frankie and Matt said, no, more bass. We need more of Geezer. And, nobody was saying, oh, my drums don't sound right, or my guitar is not loud enough. We were just concerned about the other guy, which was refreshing, So it's been, hey, man, it's I'm going to be 60 next year, and to be involved in a new musical project and charting some new musical areas, I couldn't be happier. I mean, that's just an incredible feeling for me.
It's got to be. And I mean, I know a lot of guitar players will hate to hear this, but every song doesn't have to have a guitar solo. If it doesn't call for one and require one, you don't have to put one on the record, or on the song, I should say. You want a couple on there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be guitar solos, but when we, in the first song, Down in Flames, that's that middle section, and Frankie and I said, wouldn't it be great to do something like what Plant and Page did, where they kind of like, Whole Lot of Love middle freak out section where the guitar is kind of mimicking the vocal and everything. Mm-hmm. Originally, we suggested, maybe a guitar solo. I said, I don't want to put a guitar solo in it. I want to do this voice guitar, slide guitar thing on it, So, I guess I'm just thinking more as a band member in terms of this.
That's very cool. A band I like that is kind of a super group of talent, Sons of Apollo. You know all those guys, and each one of those members, like the Billy Sheehan's, Derek, and Mike Portnoy, all those guys, Bumblefoot, they can all shred to death. But you listen to Billy just grinding on a distorted bass tone, a pedal tone sometimes, and knowing when not to play, it takes a lot more discipline than just a shred fest.
Absolutely. I think it was, it's been said by a lot of people, but Miles Davis always said that the silence in between the notes are more important than the notes.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of, you got to think of those things, when not to play.
That's right, because when you're not, someone else is doing something that's really speaking.
I mean, there's probably no band that's as well designed for huge crowds than AC/DC.
Yes.
And if you think about the spaces that those rhythm guitars leave in the verses for those vocals, there's always like a little da-da-da, da-da-da. There's always a space rather than filling it up. And that's deliberate. They're leaving space for that vocal to come forward. And then in the choruses, full-on guitar stuff. And because people say, well, how do they get away with, playing so clean? And well, those songs are so well designed for that.
Breathing room.
Yeah.
You dive in the water, you can only hold your breath for so long. You to kind of put that in a song structure as well, too. Have some breathing room. Let the audience catch their breath. Yeah,
and if everyone's, you can only fit so much sonic material into two speakers, and if everyone's playing it on 11 the whole time, it's, your sound is going to get smaller. It's the same thing as, if you start layering your guitars and you start putting, 4 tracks of guitars, 5 tracks, 6 tracks, it might sound great on its own and thick, but then when it comes time to mix, your guitar is going to get pulled back because you can't fit it all in there. So it's try and make your parts so that they'll work with one or two, try and make your songs work.
That's right. Well, here's an example where I got schooled the other day. I went and saw the Generation Axe show up in Kitchener, Ontario with my buddies, a couple buddies here in the chat as well too. And, a shred fest of guitarists there. But I've always admired every one of those guitar players, and especially Steve Vai back in the day. I went off of Eddie Van Halen for a while, and I become a Steve Vai obsessed nut. And Extreme, I liked him like the next guy, but I never went down that rabbit hole of Extreme. Loved them, but just never fussed over them. Nuno, in my opinion, stole that show. He kicked all of our asses in that crowd. Just what he did, it was unexpected how he stole that show. What an amazing player, and one of those guys that knows when not to play funk, rhythm. It's incredible.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it was quite cool, and that's the thing, because you can fill your head with a million notes, and then there's nothing memorable. You know what I mean? You need that space. And what I thought was so cool that he did, and it shows how much he connects with his fans as well too. Some extreme fan on YouTube put together this medley of some of the best passages of his and extreme songs, and he even credited the kid, and he played that verbatim, like this YouTube. Yeah, it was very cool. So
I love that. That's great.
It's nice when they give back for sure. Is there anything you can talk about touring wise with Deadland yet, or is that something that you'd rather wait until the press junkets come out?
I think so far it's only been announced that in June we'll be in Europe for Hellfest, which is a big festival in France.
Fantastic.
So I would imagine, I can't say too much, but we're not going to travel across the ocean to play one show.
It's just not feasible.
Yeah, I mean, we're all planning on doing some stuff. First up for me is a new Billy Idol residency in January in Vegas at the Palms.
And in October again too, right?
What's that?
Isn't it October you're back again?
That's right, yeah. And Billy and I are also planning on doing something different together later, a little bit later in the year. Once again, I can't talk too much about it, but we're starting to think about new stuff on the horizon with him. And
nice.
It's I'm very blessed that I can work with a guy that I've worked with for next year will be 36 years and still have a great relationship with, and he's given me his support to do this band project, and hopefully everything will coexist. But it's great for me because it keeps me on my toes. You know? And I try and always do that, whether it's, after I did Vince Neil and toured with Van Halen, I broke it down to doing flamenco, to just cleanse the palate and start doing something to challenge myself.
Sure.
And I think by doing something like Deadland Ritual and working with other musicians and stuff, it enriches my musical vocabulary, and it's I'm not burnt out on it, and it's fresh, and these guys are, they're the best of the best, and great people. I mean, just really, it's great to hang with them and make music,
Yeah, it's icing on the cake.
Yeah, exactly.
You're probably not gonna have any time, but any solo stuff other, like outside of Billy, like you can do any solo tours? Probably no time next year, right?
Not this year.
Yeah.
This year is really dedicated to Billy Idol and this band,
Gotcha.
I don't imagine there's any. I had to really put that on the back burner. I was planning on it, but given the way that I wanted to do my solo record, it ended up being what this band is.
Perfect.
Because I really wanted to form a band, but I need the energy of the other members in the band. I need that energy that Matt Sorum brings, and he's also, he's very good at business aspects of the. There's everybody brings in other things. It's not just. Frankie did the initial artwork and photography for it, so it's really, it's kind of cool. It's it's self-financed, and we did it all ourselves, and it's kind of cool to have that flexibility and say, hey, I've got an idea for a logo or this or that, or Matt have an idea for he with Kings of Chaos, he's done an incredible job of bringing that to a large audience, and we play big shows with that. So he's got the experience. He knows all the promoters and all that aspect of the business, which I don't involve myself in. I have no interest in that stuff. I'm a guitar player.
Let the pros do it.
But it's great to have someone in the band handle that. So there's all different strengths at play.
It sounds like everybody in your band wears a different hat, many hats.
Yes, exactly.
Yep, and that will be the success of the band for sure, because these bands, especially when you're self-financed and self-promoted at the moment, these other bands have to depend on all these other people, and then got these vultures coming in. You know what I mean? Yep. Picking it. Okay, you need to do it this way. No, we're doing it the way we're doing it.
I'll tell you a really interesting thing. There's a new Led Zeppelin photo book, and I'm crazy for anything about Led Zeppelin, like that first initial era of Led Zeppelin, and so I got this photo book, and there's a really interesting photo in there of, and I've read enough about how that band came together and what the predecessor was Jimmy and the Yardbirds and his relationship with Peter Grant. But there's a photograph in that book of them signing the Atlantic Records record deal, and it's only Jimmy Page. And it's kind of like people think that, Led Zeppelin really was in the early stages Jimmy Page's band. And he was the mastermind for the blueprint and the production. And he really had to fight these labels who said, oh, we're going to bring in a producer and this and that. And Jimmy said, no, I'm going to produce it. I know the way it should sound. He went and found those players. He went and found Bonham and Plant, and he knew John Paul Jones. And it's really interesting to see what really went into creating that band. It was very carefully thought out, the imagery and everything about it. And it's kind of like, I feel a little bit like that with this band. We really, Frankie is the one I knew. Matt, oh man, if I could get Matt to, to be in a band, but I didn't know if Velvet Revolver was still going or what was happening, or, and then when Geezer's name, a guy who, his, been on those records that I wore the grooves out on, and still, but when I sit down and write with him, it's not like it's still fresh, and it's still like just two guys sitting there.
Yep, two dudes.
Well, we just play. Well, you got a riff?
Yep.
I don't know. How about this one? Okay, cool. It's like anything. It's like any two guys just getting together. Having coffee and going, let's write a song. It's no different. Never changes.
That is absolutely fantastic. Last question here in the chat. Phoenix, she's over. She's a regular here on the show. She is a fantastic shredder, Kramer guitars artist, over from Brazil. She says, I read Steve will be working on the soundtrack for the Top Gun sequel, the Top Gun anthem as a guitar treasure. Is that something you can share with us, or do you even is that true?
Yeah, they are filming Top Gun 2, and Harold Faltermeyer, who I was fortunate to work with on the first film, and we won a Grammy together, is doing the score. And I saw Harold while I was on tour with Billy Idol in Munich, where he lives, and he's going to be working on the score here in Los Angeles. And I just said, well, I'm available, and he said, of course, we have to have something, So nothing's in stone yet, but I'd love to work with him and do something. And I think it's a really good sign that they brought Harold back to do the score. That's a really smart move, which means they want that flavor, and that score that he put together what would that movie be without his orchestration and not just the instrumental part of it, but Harold was really involved in every song on that as well. It was him that got Cheap Trick in on it, and Take My Breath Away and all that. Every note involved in that soundtrack, Harold was involved in.
I can't wait to hear what it's gonna turn into. I really can't. There's been so many years have elapsed, and obviously it's not just going to be a part 2 per se. When I'm saying that with the musical score, I really want to hear how the emotion's going to come through. I know it's going to be great, and it'll be nice if you are back on the fold. There's one other question. I didn't see who it came from, but I didn't even know about this at one time. You had one of your famous stolen Rayguns stolen. Did you have one stolen?
Yeah. This last year we were on tour in Europe, and I guess some nut job crazy fan masqueraded as a crew member and got up on the stage and took the ray gun. So my tech ran had to tell me that the next gig that the Raygun was gone.
Oh no!
And so lo and behold, we put out. This was at. Hey babe, what show was it taken from? It was at a London show.
London, okay.
Well, we put out the word that you don't do that, you know.
Yeah.
And they found her, and they got the Raygun back, and they shipped it to me. I think she didn't realize what she had gotten herself into.
Yeah.
You know? Raygun was retrieved.
Look, you can get one on your website. You can get one right off your website.
Yeah, I mean, those are not. You know, I wish the problem is that the Raygun thing is. You know, they're getting harder to find because the speaker has to be on the correct side. It has to have 7 different sounds, and I go in and I have put a potentiometer. The ones that I sell on my website, I'm unable to do that. And the Rayguns now they're all one little micro board on there, and I can't get in there and tweak them.
Right.
I'm looking for a company that'll you know. Manufacture an actual Steve Stevens Raygun, that we would take this idea further and have downloadable sounds and all this
USB and stuff. That'd be great.
But it's getting really hard to find these because the ones that I use are from the 70s. They're from China, and they allow you to open them up and muck around with them. So I wish I could offer the Rayguns like I do on stage to people, but it's just not possible right now.
A lot of things that are manufactured are almost disposable now for that most part.
Yeah, these are, the ones that I mess about with have like actual circuit boards with resistors and capacitors on it. It's very easy to alter them. The ones now are one little IC, and they only produce one sound, and so I can't doctor them, but I would love if anybody sees this and wants to go into business with me,
hit him up.
Putting out an actual Raygun.
Contact Josie and get in touch.
Yeah, contact Josie.
That's right. There's a super chat from John Kerry. I appreciate that as well. Before we wrap up, I was going to ask you, because the way you get in there and you tinker stuff, did you break a lot of your mom's stuff in the house trying to figure out how things work?
Oh, man, I destroyed my dad's reel-to-reel.
Did you?
Yeah. And, I took it apart, and I used to put it back together.
Yeah.
And my dad worked long hours. It was, it would take him an hour and a half to get to work each way. And so for a while, he didn't have time to listen to his reel-to-reel, So I had maybe a 3-month grace period where I took it apart. I don't know what I was thinking, but then he went to use it. And of course, the thing doesn't even fire up. And, to the day he passed away, I never told him, but, I was just like a curious kid, I used to plug I had an acoustic guitar. See, I started playing when I was 7.5, and I didn't get an electric guitar until I was 13. So I used to take the microphone from the tape recorder and shove it into the sound hole of my guitar, and then play it and distort the tape machine to kind of give me like an amplified sound,
Sure.
And but lo and behold, I ended up wrecking that thing. So.
That's how we learn, though, right?
Oh man, I would have busted my ass if I was him.
I know. It's a good thing you don't have a little Steve running around actually taking apart your amps right now and all that kind of stuff. That'd be hilarious. One thing I want to say too, we have a lot more girls watching the show now too. I started this other program called Rocking Dead. So talking about the Walking Dead TV show. So it's brought in a different dynamic. It's usually the guys watching, geeking out on guitars and stuff like that. But because some of these women are coming through now too, and even my own better half here, this is a feather in Josie's cap, almost literally. I guess on your website as well too. I guess she's got some bows for the women and for the hair and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well,
and she has her own clothing line, and she actually, is pretty, always helps me with, guitar designs and things, and stage clothes and, stuff like that. But what I think, it's interesting because, they said now 50% of all new guitar players are female. And there was an article about the one guitar company that's weathered the storm of the decrease in sales of guitars has been Fender, because Fender, if you go into the Fender site, it's very geared towards both male and female.
Right.
And they also are very smart in that they offer online lesson series with every instrument that you buy. So as a new player, it's kind of daunting to go, okay, I want to learn how to play guitar. Now what? Okay, and Fender has kind of enabled that for all these new players. You can log on, you make your own account, and you're part of this Fender Players series, and there's lessons, and you can submit questions. And all of that advertising features female and male, and I think that's the way it should be. I remember with Billy Idol, we always had a female keyboard player, and I think Billy got the idea initially from Prince. And we used to, people would say, "Why do you have a female keyboard player?" Oh, were you guys, sleeping with her? And it was like, no, she's actually great. And, we had female backing vocals in our biggest hit, Eyes Without a Face. Mm-hmm. There's always female backing on Moni Moni, and, Keith Forsey, our producer, would get in, these incredible singers from Donna Summer's sessions and stuff. And I just, it's really good that it's, hopefully it will be an equal playing field, because, now you have, like Nita Strauss, who's, kicking ass, and, it's like, hopefully it won't matter anymore,
That's right. You just say guitar player, and I've been guilty of it. I've been saying female guitar player. We say that. Why do we have to say that? Why don't we just eliminate that, right? Yeah. Because there's a million women out there that can kick a lot of our asses, like you mentioned. Nita, I've had Courtney Cox on the show. Jennifer Batten still out there kicking ass.
Jennifer was the first. I remember. Yeah. I mean, when I guested with Michael Jackson, and she was the guitarist in the band. And then here's a great one. I went away to Miles Copeland, the manager, has a castle in France, and he would bring over musicians to write with other people. So one year I was there. It was me, Stuart Copeland, Jeff Beck, and Jennifer Batten.
Saw that photo.
I mean, Jennifer would have to explain, we'd be working on something, or somebody would get stuck, and she has a knowledge of music better than, she has all the theory and all that stuff better than me and Jeff do.
Wow.
So she'd explain, oh, well, if you try this, try this inversion, and she'd pick up a guitar, or try this chord or whatever. So she paved the way for a lot of that. I mean, obviously Joan Jett, mm-hmm. Who I guested with, back in the 80s. I would play, Billy Idol and her did a lot of shows together. And she, a lot of these women who were in the trenches back then, who paved the way, really deserve a lot of recognition. But I think it's, it's great now. It's as it should be.
That's right. We're seeing signature guitars now from companies that would have never years ago made a signature for a woman guitar player. It's always the guys, and the guys are buying the guitars. Or look at Trevor Lukather. Perfect example. He's using what is it? What's the model of the guitar from Ernie Ball? Why have I ever lost her name?
It's I know who you mean though. Yeah.
I feel so embarrassed. I forget the name. But anyways, yeah.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe someone in the chat will mention it. But yeah, they're inspirations for us, and it kind of breaks down all those barriers. One last question, and we're going to let you fly because we ran a little bit late. Todd's asking, do you still have your pink Hello Kitty guitar?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to let you fly. Thank you so very much.
Hey, that guitar was no joke, man. That thing played and sounded. It had when I tell people to pick it up, I said, "What is that neck like?" And they say, "Like an old Charvel." I mean,
yeah.
It's actually a really good guitar.
That's awesome. That's totally awesome. Yeah, comfortable for sure, like an old glove.
Yeah.
That's wicked. If you see an order come through your website for bows, they're not for me, tell Josie, they're for Sandra here. So even though they would fit in my hair now, my hair's getting long enough, I could do it. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But anyways, thank you so very much. And Josie, if you can hear me in the background, thank you once again too for facilitating. You're fantastic. And you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll look forward to watching everything coming up with Deadland, Billy Idol, obviously the residency in January there. And I hope you and Josie have a great Christmas and holiday season coming up.
Yours, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys get some time to just kind of catch your breath and enjoy life a little bit before it gets busy again.
Yeah.
I'll say goodbye to you off the air, Steve. Thanks again, everyone. And everyone, have a fantastic weekend. We will see you Monday night over on Rocking Dead, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great one, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Hey, you're still here? Eric Jr. here, reminding you to check out our full lineup of quality merch. Available right now in the Broadstash Boutique. Quality products and fast shipping. Visit broadstash.com today.
I am now on Patreon. If you enjoy my content and wish to support my channel and what I do, then please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/evhgeartv. Your support assures the continued growth of this channel and a fun community in which to share our love for Van Halen, music gear, and much more.
My name is Eric, I'm playing Wolfgang guitar.
Video production services provided by Design 39 Media. Visit design39media.com for all your website, photography, and video production needs. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by vanhalenstore.com.